So what we're going to do in this webinar is we will be doing a walkthrough, taking you through a tour of our parent portal, the Frog platform, and then going through into our e-portfolios, as Mandy has just touched on in the panel discussion about the power of that. So it'll be very useful, we think, to show you just what they're doing and what's actually available. So what you already have. And for those schools that don't have Frog that have joined us today, just a little bit of a flavour of one particular area which you might find useful. So I think really points to recall from the morning so far. Since lockdown, there's been a much greater demand from parents. And since we've moved to a hybrid learning approach, the demand from parents has been more about getting involved in their child's work. We've seen schools that ask parents to comment on the child work and take photographs from when they're at home, and that's then continued when they're back into the school for teachers doing that. It's great news that we've got more emphasis on using technology as part of our overall teaching and learning strategy. It means, as Gareth mentioned, first thing in the day, a slightly higher workload at the beginning. It's like getting a rocket off the ground. You know, you need that emphasis right at the beginning and that power, but once it's up there, it's just about keeping it up there and keeping it going and reaping those benefits. So some of the tools that we're going to showcase to you today are going to be an overview of our parent portal, and just to show you some of those things you've heard, flexible and customizable. We'll show you what that means in practice. Obviously, the standard things like where to find my homework, where to find my lessons. You've seen the new way of our assignments that are about to be launched, to be able to schedule a lesson, to be able to add a Teams link, to be able to add a Google Meet into your lesson, etc. But also, again, Mandy was talking about her ECAs, her extracurricular activities. So how are we communicating extracurricular activities to parents? How can parents get involved? How can parents see what's going on? How do we give them more visibility? And how do we be more competitive in some areas? Some of our international schools obviously are competing for intake. So it's important to make sure that our brand and our vision and our ethos also comes through to our parents. So we'll take you through that, and then we'll end on the e-portfolios. So Graham, would you be able to start by sharing your screen, and then I can give everybody a little bit of a flavour of what Frog is, those that don't know. So if you could actually log into a platform, I could just click on those little buttons.
And just to let everyone know, I'm logged in here as an administrator, so I've got certain features and we'll show those, but then we'll switch over and show you what it's like for a parent. But I'm logged in right now as an admin. Sorry, Lucy, were you...
Yeah, that's great. So everything that we're showing today, just to make everybody aware, everything that we're showing today will be filmed, and we'll be sharing those videos afterwards. So you're not going to miss anything. But what we do is, within Frog, we call Frog the operating system. And when you log in, depending on whether you're a staff, student, governor or trustee, or a parent, you'll get a slightly different view. And that's up to you to choose how that looks and feels, and the information that you want to share with each of those stakeholders. But I'm going to talk, Graham and I are going to talk about widgets and applications as we go through. So just to make you aware of what they are, on the right-hand side of our Frog platform, we have a little box here, and this is our applications. And applications are things that you've heard our guest speakers talk about. So things like the Mark Book, the ability to build curriculum, the reporting, analytics, and so forth. So there are a whole package of applications that's available to you. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, here we have something called widgets. Now, Frog is built up of pages and websites, so we talk about sites, and those are then shared with the relevant stakeholders. But widgets are actions that you would drag and drop onto a page. So, for example, Graham's just dragged a text widget. He can put that onto a page. He could grab a media widget. He could put that onto a page, and that would allow him to go and search media on YouTube, Khan Academy, and so on, and embed embed really great content, but with stripping out all of those nasty little AdWords and things like adverts and things like that. So it just keeps everything contained within the Frog platform. That's a very, very basic explanation of what Frog is. We also, at the center of the screen, there's a search bar and a big blue button beside it. And the big blue button, when we click on that, you will see, we talked about the Academy. We also fill the platform with lots of pre-built things, like we could have in there the e-portfolios, a student planner, a revision system, Duke of Edinburgh Awards, extracurricular activity sites, clubs, trips, all sorts of things in there. Student council, they're all built, but as with everything with Frog, as we've just shown you, it's all customizable. So you take what we've done and then you make it your own and you brand it up to your look, your feel, your language, and everything about the school. So we're not going to show you anything that isn't there or requires an absolute genius, a technological guru to create it, although our Graham is, and everybody has been saying that throughout the day, and I think I need to wrap you in bubble wrap, Graham. So without further ado, let's log into our pre-built parent portal.
I was all ready to do that. Now, what Lucy is saying is absolutely true. This is the out of the box or platform that you can have. We'll work with you to tailor it to make it your own, but nothing we're going to be showing you is requiring additional development or somebody like me. All of this can be achieved just with the training we'll be giving. We were able to provide for you. I think that's really important to emphasize. Looking at this first page, the things that are on here, we've been working with schools for a number of years, and we've been taking their ideas. They've been sharing them voluntarily, but we've been taking their ideas of what they're telling us they want parents to have immediate access to when they log in. So, for instance, on this first page alone, first thing, let's have the child's timetable in there. What is your child going to be doing on a day-by-day basis? Much better than sort of being a paper timetable sellotaped in the back of a textbook or something like that. So really easy and instant access. And of course, personal, not something generic. Then important or just as important is the idea of parent notices, somewhere where parents know they can log in and see relevant school-based notices for them about their classes, about their year groups that are going on. And I've got a couple of examples here. But alongside that, so you might imagine that the parent notices will be something dynamic that will be changing on a regular basis. But alongside that, maybe you'll have those links for advice and guidance that are important to you as a school to push out to parents. And this has exploded in the last couple of years into its own feature. And lots of schools are doing this. So we've got everything from, if I click on this, Alistair Smith's Parents as Learners. Alistair Smith, national UK educator, worked with the FA on their education systems and in numerous schools and written textbooks, worked with us to create an area listing all of the concerns, or an awful lot of the concerns parents might have about their children. And, everything from writing and study habits to homework, to attitudes to learning and cyberbullying. And then behind each one of these, you've got, if I just click on any one up here, you've got advice and guidance and external links with further advice and guidance. But being in Frog, you as a school can take that and tailor that for yourself. So by providing that in a central area, you can help show that you're supporting parents. And then there's nothing stopping you adding in other links to external third-party companies like the parent system or the SOX system. You could have those built in. Now, that's up to you to customize. We'll show you how to do that. But then along the top, we've got some of the more standard things that you mentioned. Now, Phil, earlier on in the panel, was talking about My Class and how you can use that as a teacher to see everything that's going on with the students in your school, in your class. But you can offer that same tool for parents. So here I am. I'm logged in as a parent with my fictitious account and my fictitious child, Abby. And I can see we've got built into here the Frog Progress module. So on the subjects that the teachers are assessing, I can have a quick look along this, and I can see just from this menu alone how Abby's doing in English and maths and so on. Now, these are judgments based in progress around the curriculum, which has been broken down into learning objectives, and teachers are able to make their judgments and add evidence along those. So if I go into Abby's maths, and I can see here that 30% of her learning objectives are below target. So she's struggling here. Now, what does that mean? Well, I can scroll down and I can see an evidence of that judgment. I can expand it, and I can see that the teacher has actually added something in there that I can take a look at. I'll not bother for the moment. But then I've also got those extension resources and those learning resources for how I can support my child with a topic, with an area of maths she's struggling with. So by providing that for parents, we're able to give them that level of involvement and engagement.
And I think this really comes into, you'll see I've had to move. Someone's decided to start drilling above my head. So I've had to move, but you're also, this comes really into its own when you build your curriculum in Frog and start really assessing against your curriculum and sharing those gaps in attainment with both students and parents, doesn't it, Graham?
Absolutely. And it's about that demand that Gareth was talking about right at the start, about parents' expectations. They want to know what their children are doing because they want to be able to support their children in that learning. And they know that this is happening in school, so we can provide that out for them. Now, if you like that, there's that element of progress. We can also display a larger timetable and even a timeline, which is a record of all of Abby's activities while she's in school. Any homework she's set, any homework she's handed in, anything else that's gone on in that way can be displayed there. But if I go up to the homework area now on the top here, we've got Abby's assignment calendar embedded in here as well. And obviously, I keep saying Abby, if you've got multiple children, there's a switch and you can switch between your children to see their work. So you can see the work that Abby is being presented with, and it's replicating that view. So sure enough, here's Abby's assignments, here's her scheduled lessons. So I'm again able to support her during the day through here in the assignment calendar. If I scroll along on the top bar on this particular design, we've got a number of other things, everything from letters home and school documents and abilities for parents to update their contact details and for them to be able to contact the school. But if I just jump over, we've talked in one area in particular a lot today about e-portfolios. Now, that can then be shared with parents through a system like this, where I can have it embedded in. I'm not going to spend too long on e-portfolios right now. We're going to loop back around because we want to go into that in a little bit more detail. So next, Lucy, if it's okay with you, I'm going to jump over to looking at the things that we can offer for co-curricular.
Absolutely. I think co-curricular is something that, as we heard from the Arbor and others, it's really important. And I think there's some areas in here that when we talked earlier about mental health and well-being and addressing some of those isolation issues, particularly around things like connecting people online, if you could show us some of those areas that might be useful to some of our schools to take on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to show that. I want to show this one first, simply because I think this is a great example of how school clubs can run. This is a Duke of Edinburgh award. So you can take all the information from the D of E websites and information, but you can make it personal to your school. You can include sign-up forms. And then my favorite bit about this is the school diaries, where you can get award winners in your school to be diarizing what they're doing to help inspire the younger years. And I think that can be really powerful in there. Now, what Lucy just mentioned there, and about sort of replicating and engaging, especially when children have been isolated, is the school clubs area. So again, we have a template for this. You can take this and you can replicate it for every school, in every club in your school. And this is just an example. Now, the difference for something like this inside Frog to it being outside and just on the internet is that security. Only children and parents in your school can see that it exists. There's nobody from outside is able to view this. They've got to have an account. So I go into here and I can have a public facing page, public in school, and I can see, this is my favorite one because it's Dog Walkers Club. But I can have the photos. I've got a list of all the clubs here, and I've got a button that allows me to join as a student, that would allow me to join that club. And when I do join that club, it unlocks the members area. And if I just go over to something like this, this is the space that's not visible to everybody, but I can have my notices, I can have my forums, I can share files and so on, and I can get a sense online of that community side of it. And as the teacher administrating this, I've got a couple of extra tools in here as well. But one of the things, and I'm just going to open up a separate one here, is replicating that physical meeting, that chance to talk to each other face to face. We've got this example of a book club. So Frog's got an ebook reader built in, and thanks to the Gutenberg project by Google, there are something like 20,000 children's books available free for you to download and share in this way. But imagine you've taken a book that you want everybody to read for your book club, you add it into here, everybody reads it, and then you can jump over to the members area where you can discuss it and talk and have that engagement again, replicating that connectedness. Now, one thing that we can then do, you see I've got a lot of photos on here, and we've got a timeline solution, or a timeline where I can see everything that's going on. There's another example which might not be too relevant now, but it's always worth sharing. If I close that down, and it's school trips. Now, Gosforth Academy, Adrian Tate, who's in the comments at the moment, shares this with us. And up until COVID, was taking a group of year 10 ICT students every year to San Francisco. They were going to the Google headquarters. They were seeing everything that was going on around there. What Adrian would do, and explain this to us, and why we think it's such a great story, is that he would share this site with the parents of the children going on the school trip, explain the educational purpose around that. The children could sign up on the parents, could sign up on a form within here. And then this area became that central point for everything to do with the school trip. So the itinerary could be shared. Any important letters could be shared. One little innovation Adrian put in was asking parents to take digital copies of the passport and the visa waiver form that was required and upload them to here. Now, all of this is mobile accessible, so should there be an emergency situation in the airport or the hotel, Adrian was able to access everybody's details. Lots of other things are going on in here, but when the children were actually out on the trip, the next stage came into play with this timeline, where Adrian is able to use an app that we provide called Frog Snap. It's a free app for Android and Apple devices that allows you to take photos in the app and send them directly to an area in Frog. It does it securely, and it also does it in such a way that if you take the photo in the app, when you send it to the platform, it deletes it off your phone. So there's no safeguarding concerns or worries about teachers using personal devices. So then everybody back at school is able to follow along on a day-by-day basis as these photos just slowly appear, and you're able to see the trip. And from an engagement point of view with parents, I just think that's lovely, really. Parents, by the way, can also come on to these timelines, and they can make their own comments. They can like photos that they've seen, they can add on extra comments as well, they can ask questions, and they can see their children learning while they're out on that trip. And hopefully we'll get back to school trips like that before too long.
So I don't know if you've just seen that in the chat, Graham, but Adrian was saying they had a student that lost their passport on the plane on the way back.
Oh,
and luckily they had a photograph, obviously taken through Frog Snap, so they could see where it was found. I think, thank you, Adrian, for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that gives me a cold sweat, but at least the technology was there to back you up on that one. It's nice to hear that as a real world example. I've switched over to look at the e-portfolios. And again, in this fictitious parents account, they actually have two children, James and Abby. So we started with e-portfolios with this simple concept of having a space where children could make records of their own learning notes, they could have learning reviews with their tutors, and they could have a place to celebrate their best work and share that at home. So you can get children, you can use e-portfolios to develop what we call an authentic audience for parents to go on, see what the children are doing, and put their thumbs up and say, this is great, I love seeing this. Especially if you've got teenagers, I think that's really important, because it can be just the grunt before dinner and the grunt after dinner, and that's all you'll find about how their school day's gone. We've done various and similar things with our primary focus, but the concept is the same. This is really just about design. But you can take something like the e-portfolio, and what you do is you create a unique area for that child that their parents can view and that their teachers can contribute to. So you get this following along of learning. Now, I mentioned progress before. That can also be embedded inside the portfolio. So every time a teacher adds some evidence, it can appear in a timeline in there too. And then children can record things like their books that they're reading. So you can use this as a way of capturing all that soft data that doesn't really belong anywhere else, but can tell you so much about the child and what they're doing. So those are a couple of the out-of-the-box examples. But what I'd like to do now, with Lucy's help, is show you just how a few of our schools...
Before you do, Graham, before you do, there's something that I would like you to continue with before we go over into the e-portfolios. And this is about communication methods with parents. So you've shown the notice boards, and I think one of the things with the notice boards from a parent's perspective is you do get a notification when there's a new notice, but also the other ways of communicating with parents through the mobile app, through the push notifications, so that if there is some information on a new trip or a form to be filled in, like you've just shown, you could actually send a message out to the parents through the platform. But also things like if there is a problem in school, you need to be able to get the message out to the parents quickly, and not just get the message out, but see who has interacted with it. A lot of schools will use their own internal messaging systems, but not necessarily know who has read it. It may have delivered, but I think that's one of the nice things that we could show in our messaging system, which is just part of Frog.
We absolutely could, and thank you for interrupting me on this, because this is really quite a crucial one. So as Lucy was saying, we've got the notice boards. Now we've got a second app called MyFrog, which is a way of teachers being able to let students know of the homework that they've been set. And obviously, of course, we've got a parent view built into there, and you can demonstrate so much more. You can load the whole parent portal into the app as well. So whenever a piece of work is set to a student, that student and their parent gets a ping on their phone telling them that that work has been set, and they can see that homework, and actually the child can hand that work in on their phone as well. But what schools said is, we really like this. We want this idea of this messaging, and seeing as we've got the app, could we give them the ability to send messages via the app too? So we'd already built the technology, so really it was just a case of providing that interface, and that's exactly what we did just over about 18 months ago. This messaging tool within here lets me send a message. I can just quickly click new message. Yeah, 7 parents evening, and here parents ... So I can construct a simple text message with obviously a title, and then I can come down to here and I can search for a group. There's my year 7. Now that would, if I left it at that, that would actually send it just to the children of year 7. No good for parents evening. What I can do here instead is I can choose to send it to them and their parents, or just their parents, which I think is probably appropriate in this case. I can add links to websites. I can add links to areas within Frog. I could add links to documents, all built into here, and clicking send, it will send that message immediately to everybody's phone, and it will send it without any cost to you or the parent receiving it. It also has the ability, and I showed it just as Lucy was talking, the inbox inside the platform where you can consume those messages as well. So if a parent doesn't have a smartphone, they can still see that message. But here's the thing. because they're getting that message in a Frog system, within the Frog ecosystem, we know if they've read that message. And we can therefore tell you if that. So let me just open up this example, only because I've got a few in here. Here's a message I sent out to about a staff meeting to all these parents. I can see which parents have the Frog app installed. I can see who's read it, and I can see who's deleted it. And again, because we know this information, we're letting you know. I can also tell you how they've consumed that message, whether it's on the desktop or in the app. Now, in this example, there's quite a few parents have not read this message. This might be really something quite urgent. I might have only sent it out in a short amount of time. So what I can do is I can export this as a list, as a spreadsheet, give it to my office staff and say, it's really important we contact the other parents about this message. So nobody gets left out, nobody gets left behind. But the schools who've been using this have shown us that as the parents are driven to the app and are engaged anyway, following their child's homework, logging into the parents portal, having this messaging tool is really helping them get any communications out to parents.
Graham, before we lovely, by the way, walk through of the communications. Before we move on to showing you what good looks like and some of those beautiful e-portfolios, a couple of questions that have popped up, and one is around parent logins. So one thing that we didn't suggest, we didn't explain to anybody, was about how the parent-child relationship works, how it comes in from the MIS, and how we make sure that everything is safe and secure within the platform. Would you be able to give a quick explanation of that? And then I'll ask you another question.
Okay, no problem. I tell you what, I'll minimize that just for now because I haven't got anything I can easily illustrate for MIS integration. But Frog is populated, all of the users come from your managed information system, and that relationship that you've set up between the parent and the child already exists. So when Frog imports those users, it maintains that connection. Now, that therefore means you don't have to do any additional setup, and those accounts for parents are generated automatically. So much so that in the past we would have schools download, we can show you how to do this, but downloading all their users as a spreadsheet and then doing mail merges and setting passwords and sending it back. These days we don't recommend that. We've got a standard letter template that I can share with everybody. It's shared on our community that tells parents they go to the Frog login page, there's a forgot password link. They click that, they pop in their email address, and Frog will send them a link to reset or set their password for them. So at no point are you having to deal with personal data or mail merging or anything complicated. It all just happens for you automatically. So yeah, it's a very simple process.
There was another question, and this is partially related to Frog Snap within the e-portfolios. So basically the concern here is e-portfolios can be set to be shared with students, to be shared with the parent of that student if you wish to, or could be a trip portfolio. And one of the questions was, if it's, say, a shared portfolio, say a class portfolio or shared portfolio, how would you get away with a child taking a photograph of another child and putting it on a secure platform?
So there's a couple of things you could, if you've got any concerns, children can only have view access to these. But this being Frog, we can also, if you are going to allow children to upload, there is a management tool built into the timelines, which is what we've been demonstrating. So this is an example of it. You could embed it on a page, or you can access it via the managed timeline link in here. So quite often, if there is that concern, what I'll actually advise teachers to do, and I can help you set this up, is you will have a general timeline that is only visible to teachers. And every photo that comes into here, you can then approve or reject. And so on. So I can go in and I've got a number of controls. So I could delete an image that I felt was inappropriate and wouldn't share with everyone. I can edit it, which would allow me to approve it. I could just hide it from the timeline, which actually I think is probably the better option to delete, because the benefit of hiding it from the timeline is nobody will know about it. I can then pick up the phone, speak to mum and dad, bring them in for a meeting, and then I can expose the inappropriate photo and we can have that conversation. But I've got that protection. If I'm going to allow students to be contributing to a timeline, I'd probably build that in, and it's a simple two-step process.
I think it's a really important thing for when you're thinking about launching shared sites to parents, or e-portfolios to parents. What is it that you actually want them to see, and who has access? And obviously, Frog is safe and secure and locked down, etc. But it's a lot of this is down to what do you internally deem as how you want to share things within the Frog platform.
Exactly. And one of the things I'm quite keen on when we talk about children, effectively cyberbullying, let's face it, that's what it is. I'd rather they make that mistake in Frog. An 11-year-old doing something foolish, I want that mistake to be picked up in Frog, corrected by the teachers, and make sure that they've learned their lesson and will never do that again. If they do that on social media, on the internet, that's out there forever. And you end up creating two victims, the original bullying victim and the child who was just stupid and made a mistake.
I think that's, as somebody's just said, that's very well said. It is a learning curve. And obviously, people expect their children not just to learn about curriculum at school, but life skills too. Okay, right. I think we've answered all the questions, Graham.
Okay.
Can you please show us what good looks like?
We've been promising this now several times. I've just got a tour of 4 different schools using e-portfolios in increasingly interesting and creative ways. And the first, we'd already heard from Mandy on the panel. This is what they're doing for all of their year groups. And it's that concept of my best work that we were looking at in one of those templates that we had earlier. But they wanted this to be a multi-year approach. So there's a year 3, there's a year 4 and 5 and onwards up to year 9. And as the students are going through the school, they've got a different page where they're adding on their material as they go. So obviously, what you would expect to see in year 3 is going to be quite different to what you see in year 9. But rather than having some sort of endless scroll where you've got to get all the way to the bottom to see the stuff they did a year ago, now you can see it each on individual pages, and you get that sense of development, and you build that pride that the children have in there. So that's just a really nice example of something. Now, the next one was a situation the Edron school in Mexico showed us that they were doing. And I just think this is just visually lovely. But when the children and their parents are adding to their child's e-portfolio, they want their teacher to know that they've done that. So Edron prepared all of these cartoon images of their staff, popped them in here, and the children, the idea is simple. They add something to their best work section, and then they want to show this to Miss Emily. So they click that button. Miss Emily sent an email with a link that's for that e-portfolio. She can go on, she can like, she can comment. And it's a really nice little feature. And then there's some of the examples of the work underneath. So then taking that to the next stage, and Gareth mentioned this in his introduction, but I'd just like to go into it in a little bit more detail. Finton House School in London, they were starting their journey with e-portfolios when COVID hit, and they were just starting to experiment and use them. And they realized that they could use them to keep that all-important teacher-child link going. So when the children and their parents would log in, they had packed out sites full of resources of what you're going to do on a Monday at this time and so on, giving their children that all-important structure that they were missing out on by not being in school. But then building onto that with all of those resources was the use of the e-portfolios. And the children were asked to take photos of their work and submit them in for the teachers to see. And we've got this lovely example. I've blurred the faces for data protection, obviously, but children holding up their work, parent taking that photo, and it being sent up for their teacher to approve. And as Gareth was talking about earlier, once lockdown was eased in the UK, this was flipped because parents were then wanting to see what their children are doing during the day. So teachers would then take the photos of the children with their work, send them in. The expectation wasn't every child, every lesson, every day, but it was just to build up that thing. We don't want to turn teachers into, just there for photography purposes, but it was a lovely way of keeping that homeschool communication going and maintaining it as well. And then finally, just a slightly different example, Canterbury School in the Canary Islands is an all-through school, and they start at nursery. And in fact, they've got pre-nursery classes too. And again, here's all the work that we need you to do. Here's all the resources. Here's your e-portfolios, you older years, where you're going to be adding your resources and your best work, and we're going to be sharing that at home. But for the nursery side of it, they had something that they wanted to try doing called a daily diary. So we worked with them a bit on how could we do this, and we settled on Frog's form system, which again allows you, it's a very secure tool. Teachers are able to search for a student, fill in a whole bunch of information, in terms of the very little ones here. Did they eat everything they needed for lunch? Do we need you to bring something tomorrow? And, how have you been getting on during the day? So you're able to fill all that in. And on submission to that, when you submit that in, it then goes into a list. So you get this diary list here of everything that, in this case, this fictitious student, Carla, has how she's been getting on. And for the parents to then reach out to the teachers, rather than sharing emails, rather than having an external system, which is no good for team teaching apart from anything else, we've got a daily diary contact form. So you search for a teacher, you fill in your message and you hit submit, and that emails the teacher directly. So it's just that improving that communication, but having a communication log at the same time. And that was the last of the really special ones I wanted to show for the moment.
The really special ones. Graham, that's been really great. And I think we have 2 more webinars in our series. So we have one on Tuesday and then one on Thursday next week. And we're really carrying on through some of the themes that we've seen throughout today. And we've touched on sharing homework and assessment and building curriculum within the platform slightly today. But our next webinar on Tuesday, we're really going to be diving into addressing gaps in attainment, and where do we actually use Frog to help fill some of those gaps. And then on Thursday next week, we'll be looking a little bit further at the professional development platform. So hopefully you can join Graham and myself for some of those.